This video is sponsored by Manta Sleep. Monsters, zombies, and aliens are one thing when it comes to these types of scenarios. But things can change when putting yourself in an isolated incident involving that of something called the Variants. Situated in the confines of a long-abandoned and then reopened insane asylum, lorded over by World War II German scientists, American government influence, genetic manipulation on the criminally insane, and being reopened and empowered by corporate special interests. There is a litany of Resident Evil Umbrella-esque finagling, making a slippery slope of real-world US governmental influence into an unsurvivable chain of events that would lead to you either being ripped apart, stabbed in dozens of different ways, or ultimately tortured and experimented on till you are a crazy, mindless killing machine or just a pile of meat. So what is it about this asylum and what it could mean for your survival? Well, let's find out, as today we are discussing why you wouldn't survive Outlast's Mount Massive Asylum. Trying to sleep in the corridors of Mount Massive Asylum may be impossible, but it won't be for you thanks to today's sponsor, Manta Sleep. I've got a house full of cats and dogs waking me up throughout the night, driving me crazy. It's hell trying to catch some Z's, but I could finally sleep soundly while using the Manta Pro Sleep Mask. With its sleek design, it adjusts perfectly over your eye sockets to block out all light and not irritate your face or squeeze too tightly around your head. If you're concerned about size, I mean, it's comfortable on my big ass head, so no worries there. They are so comfy, in fact, that I took a midday nap and I passed right out. To make things calmer and give me a more restful slumber, I also use the Manta White Noise Machine. With an easy plug-in and a remote control to switch between 5 different types of white noise, 5 different fan sounds, 3 different ambient rain tracks, and 2 ocean sounds, you have everything you need to pass the hell out peacefully. Growing up in Texas, a fan was basically mandatory to be on, so hearing that really helps me out. So having 5 different fan sound settings was a dang blessing. I tell you what, sleep is important. So get your best sleep and try it for yourself now by visiting Manta Sleep. Click the link in the description down below and use code WowSuchGaming for 10% off your entire order. Do it now, so a good night's sleep won't be just a dream. The origins of what would be known as the Mount Massive Asylum for the Criminally Insane stems from the US government's defunct agency, the OSS, or Office of Strategic Services, created for espionage activities. Executing what was known as Operation Paperclip in 1945 brought in former German scientists, engineers, and technicians, using their talents to create a wide range of technology in the advent of the Cold War, eventually coinciding with that of another US government program called MK Ultra, a CIA-led initiative that sought to utilize what the Germans made what was known as a truth serum in other ways to what was described as to eliminate the will of the person examined, largely against their will or even without their knowledge. Basically, a red, white, and blue continuation of German World War II era experimentation, creating and administering psychoactive drugs to mentally manipulate individuals, even going as far as to enact methods of behavioral behavioral modification through sensory deprivation, isolation, electroshock therapy, hypnosis, verbal and sexual abuse, and more variants of torture in order to change a person's mind. Experiments would be done discreetly on even American citizens and military through the aid of 30 different universities and institutions to perfect their look into mind control. This is real stuff, by the way. The CIA would acquire 100 million doses of LSD from Switzerland and subjected citizens such as drug addicts, prostitutes, men that were caught at brothels in the act, prisoners, and most notably, mental patients, putting them through a lot of this mental manipulation. The objective was to get and prod upon people who could not fight back because of their backgrounds, their mentality, and more, nearly always being non-consensual, expanding even into secret detention camps across Japan, Germany, and the Philippines to avoid criminal prosecution and to fully experiment on prisoners with no limit or knowledge to the outer world. It was during this that an American transnational company by the name of the Murkoff Corporation rose to prominence, establishing and running the aforementioned asylum in the 1950s within the remote mountains of Lake County, Colorado, using the criminally insane as test subjects for years without any interference or oversight. Sometime after 1955, the CIA sought to create sleeper agents to infiltrate communistic countries, making it into basically mindless super soldiers that did the government's bidding, leading to the construction of the Sinaloa facility in the middle of the Arizona desert near the Colorado River. Murkoff would work in conjunction with Project MK Ultra with the US government throughout the 1950s and 60s via covert operation of their own project called Lathe, led by an individual obsessed with the idea of thought reform by the name of Hendrik Juliet Easterman. His history of blaming Korean brainwashing for his brother's sewer slide, wanting to harness that concept into mind control to use on the enemies of America, acquiring victims through the asylum and other means. Project Lathe would hit a huge hiccup though by June 29, 1958, when, through an undisclosed event, over 100 patients died along with 50 other staff members, deeming the project to be too unsafe even if parameters were redesigned and or hardened. A shutdown would be made later that year with no results. However, there would be a second version of Project Lathe that would see what Easterman would call success in creating reagents. Subjects put through stealth and combat trials against experimental populations, failed test subjects abandoned former reagents, and entities known as prime assets. As a part of the prequel multiplayer game called Outlast Trials, we will not discuss too much into the capabilities of these threats to your survival, but if this video performs well enough, maybe we can retread that ground deeper at a later date. But of note about these reagents and the monstrous beings within the trials was how they were created. This was a part of the history, but we will not go into the survival aspect quite yet. Through the use of early versions of what would be called the morphogenic engine, developed by Dr. Rudolf Wernicke, a former Nazi scientist that had been developing the device to manipulate a person long enough so that they can control a swarm of nanorobotics or nanites called the Walrider, wanting to create a person capable of commanding a locust-like swarm of machines purely through their mind. The procedure to control the Walrider was nearly impossible though to even try and perfect, only ever manifesting control over a small swarm back in 1938 before never seeing results like it again before being abandoned in World War II Germany. However, the mad scientist's American migration during Operation Paperclip would rekindle this project as an asylum staff member, allowing him to completely construct the device within an underground laboratory underneath the asylum. It would be the perfect testing grounds, needing a subject that's undergone extreme amounts of mental distress, horror, and overall mind-altering agony that pushes the brain to a certain point. One where the nanites could override this tormented individual's cells to become what was basically nano factories to produce more nanites from the body indefinitely via sheer willpower and the mind. Countless asylum patients were subjected to the morphogenic engine trying to find a perfect host. therapy sessions that induced extreme mental states, leading to psychosomatic responses throughout the victim's bodily systems. This duress would have them more susceptible to nanite manipulation. However, this process of the morphogenic engine, before even being subjected to the machine, would cause increased madness to the already criminally insane, meant that they were already going to be magnifying their mental decline beyond humane and human limits. Those that would show promise would be placed in these orbicular chambers, hooked up to tubes crammed in every hole of the body, injecting nanites at a constant rate in the hopes of achieving the Walrider's ultimate goal. However, all subjects would instead become failures that would only develop severe brain lesions and tumors that would make them completely hostile, incurable, and completely gone. The project would last, with countless souls brought there to be driven deeper into madness. This would go on for years, until eventually 3 scientists above ground in the asylum were slaughtered by an unknown patient. Authorities witnessing this had ordered the entire asylum to be condemned and shut down. Finally, in 1971, Mount Massive Asylum for the criminally insane would permanently close its doors. Project Lathe 2, long forgotten, and Wernick's Project Walrider cancelled. The following year, in 1972, the activities of Project MK Ultra would be divulged to the public. The files and findings of MK Ultra were ordered to be destroyed, never to be used again, with some still remaining in the abandoned halls of the asylum. Over 30 years later, the Murkoff Corporation sought to revive the Walrider project and reopened the asylum in 2009, publicly labeling this as a charitable organization aiding the mentally ill, with the now over 90-year-old Wernick faking his death to be removed from the public eye, and more importantly, investigative entities. Over the course of the next 4 years, with proper funding, the morphogenic engine would be reinstated and used non-stop once again, now inducing extreme dream therapy on these dangerous lunatics, leading to the physical, mental, and even biological sins that occurred within each test subject decades ago, but now way more rampant. The Walrider project was creating overtly unstable and hostile patients beyond what was conceived as rejects. The tumors and lesions were making each one of them stronger, making them mutate, their minds mutilating their bodies from the inside out, while their thoughts ripped away at their own flesh. These mutated people and insane patients would be labeled simply as variants, seen as a derogatory term for how different the failed experiments were, as how mutant-like they were, and basically were not humans, but variants of humans. Despite this, they were all still contained and treated inhumanely even more, basically poking an already feral monkey that is in a cage. Some of the working staff at the asylum that were labeled as liabilities or even expendable would be forcefully inducted into this testing, like that of Richard Traeger, the head of business development at the asylum and even research development at Murkoff, a man obsessed with surgery and biology that had graped a female staff member and attacked others, being put into the machine that he once subjected others to. The steady flow of subjection would change early in 2013, when a young man by the name of William Billy Hope was admitted to the asylum. Having served in the US military, his own mother assumed that he was suffering from PTSD and needed extreme treatment. That is why he needed to go to the asylum. But in reality, she did it for an undisclosed large sum of money to spend on Swarovski figurines. Imagine your own mother selling you into a mental torture facility for these things. Murkoff was buying any people they could for the highest bidders just so they could have patience. Hope was quickly discovered to be different though when he was put through the morphogenic engine. Viewing the mad Dr. Wernick soon as his own father, he was willingly allowing himself to believe in his worldviews, to willingly decline more and be hooked up into these machines, and eventually was able to control the Walrider. The ambitions of Wernick were finally realized released after almost 80 years. This breakthrough would mean a shift in wartime efforts to the US, monetary funding for Murkoff, and making a superhuman like that of Wernick's Reich-minded origins. But his obsessive request upon the One-Wish Willow came with dire consequences. For on the night of September 17th, 2013, Billy Hope used the nanites at his disposal to begin a slaughter in the asylum's underground lab. The resulting carnage would be swift and brutal. Beyond the immediate staff being killed by the molecular bots, the cell blocks and medical ward would be completely opened up, freeing every single mutated and far-gone mental maniac within. All security personnel that attempted to neutralize these threats were met with an agonizing death, dismembered, disemboweled, tortured, skinned alive, eaten, had their bodies sexually used before and after death, had their genitals mutilated, and more. Research and support staff would follow suit, making Mount Massive Asylum for the criminally insane into the Mount Massive Kingdom for the criminally insane, getting so bad and uncontrollable in their horrifically powerful and varied physical alterations that even when Murkoff deployed a private military force, those decked out soldiers were easily wiped out in just a matter of minutes. Any survivors of the asylum fiasco barricaded themselves up in rooms and tried to keep themselves scarce, but one of very few fates awaited them: to have the variants find them and use them as they see to a hysterical fit, to hide indefinitely with no hope of help or escape until you die of starvation, dehydration, exhaustion, you name it, or that the sounds of the slaughter of people in the halls or the room you're in, and the thought of being on the receiving end of all that, would cause one to hit Alt F4 on themselves to be spared of the torment. And it is here that we will deviate from the narrative and stop giving context and lore into this story. We will now put you into the why you wouldn't survive scenario and the place of the protagonist, the investigative reporter Miles Upshur. But not even that, we're going to do something a little more twisted than just somebody investigating the place. And there ain't no plot armor to make you harder to see or make these criminally insane variants somehow unable to find you and easily tear into you like they did a heavily armed squadron. Hypothetically, Shapiro speaking, let's say you were someone sold, donated, inducted into the asylum by a loving family member or friend. Nothing necessarily wrong with you, but they may just be taking anyone for study purposes at this point, and that you were a patient that just got a cozy room there before any kind of testing could be done on you. And that is when hell broke loose. That is how you got there. So none of that, well, I just wouldn't go to the asylum, simple as that. And you will not be built different to survive this, as those inside are literally built differently. The asylum, with no restrictions, rules, or law, became a killing floor, a psychopath's playground, and you are in a place where even if you knew the layout of this good season of American Horror Story, you would still be lost by the barricades, rampant destruction, zoning of variants, and just the sheer mess of having to navigate through it all. Many of the escaped patients will freely roam the asylum with no set purpose. Some are so afraid of existence that they can barely even move. Some are so crippled by their torment that they will flee or recoil in fear at the sight of you. Others will be so prone to self-harm that they will resort to bashing their heads against walls to ease the pain of the voice in their heads, or bleed themselves out to drain their life to escape this torturous tomb. Some you'll find sitting around watching static on TV or simply wandering around with blindfolds on. Some are bound to wheelchairs left to rot and agonize in their pain. And a rare sight and sound you may hear is someone just simply playing the piano. But just witnessing any of this would already be like being subjected to the tamest exposure of a Deadite invasion, shattering your psyche in any direction that you cannot predict, or even triggering forms of PTSD you either knew or did not know you had. This is where we'll get into the variants, who will be reveling in the unrestrained confined chaos, constantly hunting for anything that isn't wanting to be mutilated just for the sick thrill of their screams and torment, stronger than anything else and more psychopathic, mutilative, if that's a word, and more. So, first off, let's start off with the soldier, aka Chris L. Walker, a former U.S. military police operative and a Murkoff security guard. Given his burly and inhuman-like strength, he was dubbed simply as the Strong Fat, which he loathed. Compared to this incredible bulk, you're just a ragdoll waiting to be tossed aside and discarded. His muscle mass lending him incredible strength and durability on top of that, with tracking skills that would put Kraven the Hunter to shame. If you are unfortunate enough to get caught in his grisly grasp, he can easily rip you in half. And that's all assuming he does not toy with you first. Like if Lenny from Mice and Men was given Navy SEALs training and you as a test dummy. Any defenses you put up will just be broken through like the Kool-Aid Man busting his way in, waiting till you are finally relaxed and just burst through the doors and walls. One of his favorite finishes on victims is by throwing them through objects violently, like he is trying to win a Temu Pokemon plush at a rinky-dink carnival. The best chance you have to attempt to survive him is hide and pray to whoever you believe in that he does not decide to search in your hiding spot like a game of Dead by Daylight. And as for outrunning him, that is out of the question. His upped muscle mass puts him at near pinnacle human speeds, maybe even faster than Usain Bolt. You can try your hand at sneaking and crawling through air vents to make your great escape, but this is all assuming you also avoid the rest of the deranged criminals trying to get to you. Like the surgeon, aka Dr. Richard Traeger, a former executive of research development at the Murkoff Corporation, specifically at the asylum before he became an experimenting surgeon. He's been known to perform inhumane tests and mutilate those he treated. Unlike other variants, he appears to have a strong psyche and mental ability, which further adds to his highly sadistic and psychopathic nature. Even before the events of Murkoff, he lacked empathy and morality. He would study how a body can survive without lungs or even vital organs. Then after the events, his already vile nature was exacerbated as he was left with no purpose in this world. So his work became his instrument for merciless acts of human experiments and mass murder. Throughout your stay at the asylum, where it's kind of like the Hotel California, you can check in, but you can never leave, you may hear a normal enough sounding voice over the intercom that seems to want to help you escape your current assailants to give you a chance to survive. You're gonna want to take any help you can get, especially when you're stressed out of your mind. But be warned, there is nothing normal in this hellish landscape. Take that voice as a sign you need to be more cautious and vigilant. It's meant to lull you into a false sense of security. This broadcasted voice is one of manipulation and derangement. The next thing you know, you'll end up being knocked out via either blunt force, gas, or a combination of both. And then finding yourself restrained to a wheelchair while being mocked and verbally abused along the way to where your treatment will begin. To be subjected to living torturous experiments and being alive throughout the entire experience, even seeing your innards being surgically taken out just to see your mind snap. The surgeon will do everything he can in his abilities to mutilate you while keeping you alive and restrained. A truly awful way to go. Then we have the twin. No, not them. The inmates at the asylum with homicidal and cannibalistic tendencies, wandering the prison block naked, unscared, seemingly normal in appearance, well, despite the gigantic muscle mass, and wielding large machetes, with a penchant for procuring and eating tongues and livers. I guess sort of a delicacy for them. Do not be fooled by their appearance and their elegant ways of talking. They are as dangerous as anyone else here. They have a strong loyalty towards Father Martin and his faith. We will get into that more when we get to the Wall Rider section of these variants, but one, in order to avoid a twisted fate with the twins, would have to convert to Martinism, or at least fake it well enough to convince them that you are part of their flock. Otherwise, you'll be chopped to bits like Jason Voorhees, and then served up as the next meal like Bubba Sawyer. The groom, aka Eddie Gluskin, or better known to his fellow inmates as the man downstairs, is a man of a horrifying history as a heinous and misogynistic killer. With no female residents within the asylum, which, if you are female, you will most likely be given amplified gender-based treatment with his pent-up marital, mommy, or incel issues, or probably a combination of all three. He will have turned his obsession to that of forcing male inmates through crude and brutal attempts at performing sex changes on them. If you are male and you end up here, you will be put through chemical and or bisected castration in his search for finding and or creating his perfect bride.
Patient is prepped. No one's ever attempted an
ovaries or a womb
transplant before. Players!
I don't believe that man's ever been to medical school.
That's right, Buzz. With no background in a surgical field, most, if not all, of his victims would die long before any dude's outie became an innie, which further just deepens his delusions. With each failure of his sexual pursuits, he would take each mutilated corpse and string them up in the most grotesque fashions. No one is safe, not even other variants. He is going to get the marriage that he always wanted. This deranged romanticist can be identified if you or another inmate is heard being called darling. The best chance you have at escaping him is to remain silent as a witness and try to sneak away. Because if you're caught, prepare to die via extreme genital mutilation. To him, any hole's a goal, so long as he could turn your elephant trunk into a front hole. And if you somehow survive all of that, you will be met with the choice of marrying him, lest ye be slaughtered insalaciously.
I've looked all over, but no girl here can I find who seems to be just like the little girl I have in mind.
But he is not working alone, as Dennis, aka Dissociative Dennis, an inmate with DID, Dissociative Identity Disorder, with 4 very distinct personalities. If you were lucky enough to survive, escape, and or avoid the groom, then this is someone you definitely need to watch out for. In order to avoid himself being mutilated by the groom, he reached an agreement with the madman by working for him, luring in, trapping, and offering potential arranged brides. His 4 personalities work in kind of a delicate balance to ensure you are lulled into a false sense of security before binding you and sending you in for genital processing. Either that, or his personalities will all come out at once as he hunts you.
There he is! What do you think?
Oh, he'll do.
For once we agree. He got away! The groom will have us...
Sounding like multiple people discussing how they plan on trapping you and capturing you. And the entire time, if you don't see them, you will truly believe that there are numerous people after you simply as just one very dangerous and unassuming man, wearing down on your psyche even more as you feel like there's more and more people looking to have you converted. The danger begins to ramp up hellaciously as we approach that of the cannibal, aka Frank Antonio Manera, a cannibalistic psychopath with a largely redacted past, refusing to bathe or eat typical food, rather acting like a feral beast hunting anything and everything that breathes, killing and eating anything that he can get his hands on, choosing to make his territory the asylum's cafeteria, making the vicinity strictly off limits to you if you are truly looking to not only survive, but to not be attacked by a being more animal than man. In the long term, however, your days stuck within these walls will have you needing to scrounge up water and whatever food you can find, leaving you no choice but to go in there for the last of the edible food, unless you want to become the 100th cannibal in here. This being the only cafeteria in the entire building where the food is stored this is going to be a mandatory outing for you. You'll have to study the layout of the building to find stealthy entry points to not be detected by him or others that may alert him to your presence. His bulky and honestly demon-like appearance is going to be too much, because once he's aware of your presence, he will hunt you endlessly down like that of a yacha. At the heart of all this chaos, at the epicenter of all this carnage, is what was the inspiration and driving force behind all of these grim machinations for decades had led up to. The Walrider, aka the Swarm. A near godlike being of nearly bottomless potential. So godlike in fact that his projections, powers, and the madness that both surrounded him and led up to his proclaimed ascension would seep into the psyche of everyone in the asylum, revered by one Father Martin and a congregation that would deify Walrider under the new scripture called Gospel of Sand, seeing anything and everything as divine interjection or intervention by the Walrider, doing whatever his tortured and dementia-ridden mind will connect the dots to while speaking English and Latin, even preventing your escape from the asylum if he views you as an apostle of the almighty Walrider. While meaning well to keep you alive and guide you, his misguided ways will most likely keep you from ever escaping and accidentally leading you to that of any special variant, like a lamb to the slaughter. But these are just his actions towards Miles Upshur. To anyone else, he would probably view you as either a lost soul in need of saving, or even worse, a heretic. And one would have to put on a decently good facade to trick him if you didn't already start believing this new religious sect. Otherwise, he would most likely see you sooner sacrificed rather than letting an agnostic roam free, to use his flock of followers to do his bidding to end you as they see fit, much like the twins who would chop you to pieces if you sullied, made fun of, or did anything to bring down their faith. But for Father Martin personally, one cannot say the furthest he will go for you, but it is assumed to be brutal, possibly even doing to you what he did to himself in the events of the series, where he both crucified and burned himself alive. This could be you, which brings us back to ye of the source of much faith. William Hope. His mind torn and tossed to the wind by Wernick to believe his ways, to want control, and most of all, want you dead. While his physical body will be deep in the labs possessing the morphogenic engine, the nanites his mind completely manipulates will be swarming across the annals of the asylum, nearly invisible to the human eye, only being able to be noticed by its faint black aura, mostly detectable by night vision tech, as shown when Upshur's camera could detect it through the same feature. Despite being composed of tiny little nanobots, this prey-like phantom will be stronger than any man on Earth, and certainly anything you may or may not have faced yet in your entire time within Mount Massive Asylum. It is relentless in its pursuit, that it could easily see you being ripped in half and throwing around anyone who dares gets in its way. There is no fighting this thing conventionally, especially with the limited resources at your disposal that will be randomly thrown about. The best you can do to hopefully survive is by just trying to slow it down and making the best run for it you can. Doors and walls between the both of you will be your best friend. It'll buy you some much needed time, but not that much. If escape from the building is impossible, your last-ditch effort would be infiltrating the labs and killing Hope to put an end to the Walrider, but the religious sect of the Walrider may stop you from doing this, or you'll be killed by any variants that are roaming the halls. But by some miracle, you get all the way to the basement through all of these obstacles, find the tube that he's in and kill him. Well, it's not gonna get any better, because even then the nanites will go rogue. Without a mind to originate from and direct them, they will seek to find a new host body to become the new Walrider. If it were to get a hold of you, you would feel an almost endless swarm of bug-like machines enveloping and even sinking into every fiber of your being, crawling and moving around inside you with no way of getting them out. Once they're in there, they are settled, where they will either pull you to pieces as a victim or unsuitable host, or worse, to have you feeling yourself lose all that makes you, you. Slowly feeling your sense of self drifting away bit by bit, from having feelings of your own body slip away, to feel helpless and panicked at the fact that you're losing sensation in your limbs and watching as they betray you and not act in a way that you are wanting. One can imagine this would induce panic and probably pain at first as you try to fight against it and try to take back control of your own body. Then, once all feeling and movement leaves your frame, the feeling of depersonalization will set in, leaving you feeling trapped like a passenger in your own body that is no longer your own. Then, slowly, similar things start happening to the mind. The freedom of having your own thoughts just starts becoming harder and harder. Memories that were once yours slowly fading into the ether and being replaced with thought and memories that are not of your own. Of all of the teachings of a mad scientist, of a young man that was forcefully tortured for who knows how long, and so many more that will possibly be consumed into this developing hive mind. Till there is nothing left of what makes you you anymore, because you're not you anymore, you're someone else entirely, or to be more accurate, you are something else. Your mind being the secondary catalyst for a gigantic cataclysm that could very well expand out from the asylum and usher in a different era for the world. But you will not be a being of superpowered godly might, but a mind erased to be replaced by the insanity brought on by the asylum. Your body and the building will serve as ground zero for what is to come next. Insanity will be the new worldwide doctrine eventually, and your body simply will be the bridge to leaving the walls of Mount Massive Asylum for the criminally insane. From the moment you're thrust into this hellish pit of a place, your life as you once knew it will definitively be over, whether from the traumatic things you'll witness and experience that will break you to the core, that'll just drive you insane to the point of losing all sense of self, or being brutally mutilated and murdered in the most obscene and vile of ways. It's a guarantee that you'll never be as you once were, forever scarred, mentally, metaphorically, and physically, in a way that'll never truly heal. Of course, a lot of this assumes you actually have a chance of not only surviving, but also escaping. Everyone and everything in the asylum is out there to try to consume you, to experiment on, to mutilate, to do any number of things that will ultimately lead to killing you. There is really no friendly face or someone that'll put an end to the horrors that you will face. And even if someone is friendly, that face is not looking too friendly, and there will be no way to call for outside help. All cellular signals will go nowhere. There is no landlines to call for help. No light at the end of the tunnel to help you hold on to hope. The only thing you have to look forward to is death, pure chaos, and trauma of every kind with no end. An endless string of adrenaline and terror until your heart and mind give out. Death is always lurking around every corner and every shadow and at the end of every corridor. From monstrous behemoths, once man, to cannibalistic psychopaths that will hunt you down relentlessly, you will not survive, especially with a godlike entity looking to take over or destroy you. You may still hold out for hope, because if anything, outside interference would probably be a method of scorched earth from the Murkoff Corporation looking to avoid the knowledge of everything they were doing inside the asylum, getting out and being told to the world, and ultimately ruining their reputation, causing tons of legal litigation, so it would lead to Murkoff bombing the ever-living hell out of the asylum. It would be easier to blame a psychopath that set up explosives all over the building and then blowing them up, rather than telling the world they were trying to make psychopaths telepathically control machinery. In the end, you'll either end up giblets on the floor, a body hanging from the ceiling, a mutilated body for multiple psychos' purposes, a burning body offered to the wall rider to be shredded apart at the molecular level by the wall rider, or in the end, have having your mind be destroyed by the mass psychosis of the wall rider hijacking your entire being. All this, or to be destroyed via explosives to erase any record of your grueling torment. Regardless, no matter what, your mind will be eradicated, and you'll probably end up being just another corpse, having suffered 1,000 ways to die within the walls of Mount Massive Asylum for the criminally insane.